Your eye color is not a coincidence. It is not a cosmetic detail, and it is definitely not random. The color of your eyes is the result of thousands of years of human survival, migration, and biological problems. Long before mirrors, beauty standards, or social meaning existed, eye color served a very specific purpose, helping your ancestors survive their environment. To understand what your eye color really means, you have to stop thinking of the human body as modern. The human body is ancient. It evolved under conditions that were often brutal, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Sun exposure, climate, food availability, and geography shaped every part of us, including our eyes. At the center of eye color is a substance called melanin. Melanin is the same pigment responsible for skin and hair color, and its primary job is protection. It absorbs light, especially ultraviolet radiation, before that light can damage cells and DNA. In the earliest human populations, which evolved near the equator in Africa, sunlight was intense. High levels of melanin in the skin and eyes acted as a biological shield. Eyes rich in melanin reduced glare, protected delicate eye tissues, and maintained visual clarity in harsh daylight. This is why dark eye colors dominated early human populations. For tens of thousands of years, brown eyes were the default setting for humanity. They weren't just common, they were necessary. As humans began migrating out of Africa and into new regions, something changed. The farther populations moved from the equator, the weaker and less consistent sunlight became. In these environments, too much melanin became a disadvantage. Melanin blocks light. That's great when sunlight is overwhelming, but in regions with long winters, overcast skies, and limited daylight, blocking too much light can reduce visual sensitivity and interfere with vitamin D production, which depends on UV exposure. Over generations, small genetic changes began to appear. These changes reduced melanin production in the iris. At first, the differences were subtle. Lighter shades of brown, softer pigmentation, but over time entirely new eye colors emerged. These changes didn't happen because lighter eyes were better. They happened because, in certain environments, they worked better. Eye color began to diverge as humans adapted to radically different lighting conditions across the planet. Each color represents a different evolutionary trade-off between protection and sensitivity. Importantly, eye color does not affect intelligence, personality, or moral character, but it does influence how the eyes interact with light, how much glare is experienced, and how visual information is processed under different conditions. Even today, people with different eye colors often experience light differently. Some are more comfortable in bright sunlight, others see better in dim conditions, some experience more eye fatigue from screens. These differences are subtle, but they are real. Your eye color is part of a system designed for survival in a specific environment, not necessarily for modern indoor life. Artificial lighting, constant screen exposure, and urban living have created conditions that no color was originally optimized for. Yet the ancient adaptations remain. Your eyes still behave according to rules written thousands of years ago. And by understanding those rules, you begin to see your eye color not as a superficial trait, but as a biological story, one that connects you directly to the landscapes your ancestors once walked. In the next part, we'll explore the most common eye color on Earth and why it became humanity's strongest natural defense against the sun. Brown eyes are the most common eye color in the world, and for good reason. They are the original human eye color, shaped by intense sunlight and harsh environmental conditions that defined early human life. The deep brown appearance of these eyes comes from high concentrations of melanin in the iris. This melanin acts like a built-in filter, absorbing large amounts of incoming light before it reaches the sensitive structures inside the eye. From a survival standpoint, this was incredibly important. Early humans spent most of their lives outdoors. There were no hats, sunglasses, or shelters capable of blocking prolonged sun exposure. The eyes needed protection. Melanin provided it. By absorbing excess light, brown eyes reduce glare and visual distortion in bright environments. This allows for clearer vision under intense sunlight, which would have been critical for hunting, gathering, and navigating open landscapes like savannas and deserts. Brown eyes also offer superior protection against ultraviolet radiation. UV exposure can damage eye tissue over time, increasing the risk of inflammation and degeneration. High melanin levels significantly reduce this risk. This is why brown eyes are most prevalent in populations that evolved closer to the equator. In these regions, sunlight is constant, direct, and powerful. Brown eyes weren't just beneficial. They were essential. Visually, brown eyes often appear uniform and stable. Unlike lighter eyes, they don't shift dramatically in different lighting conditions. However, under certain light, especially low or warm light, subtle golden or amber tones can appear. This isn't a color change, but an interaction between light and the layered structure of the iris. Functionally, brown eyes tend to perform better in bright environments. People with darker eyes often experience less discomfort in strong sunlight and less glare overall. This can translate into greater visual endurance in outdoor conditions. But like all adaptations, brown eyes come with traits. In low-light environments, high melanin levels can slightly reduce light sensitivity. While this difference is minor, over generations, it became more noticeable in regions where sunlight was scarce for large portions of the year. As humans moved northward into Europe and parts of Asia, environments changed faster than biology could fully adjust. The result was the emergence of lighter eye colors, not as replacements, but as alternatives better suited to those conditions. Despite this, brown eyes remain dominant worldwide. They represent a robust, reliable adaptation that works well across a wide range of environments. Culturally, brown eyes have often been associated with warmth, stability, and strength. While these associations are subjective, they may stem from the visual depth and consistency that darker eyes present. Because the pupil is less visually distinct in dark irises, emotional changes can be harder to detect, which some interpret as calmness or composure. Biologically, however, brown eyes are simply efficient. They prioritize protection, clarity, and durability. In evolutionary terms, they are a conservative design, one that worked so well it never needed to change for most of humanity. In the next part, we'll explore the most dramatic eye color mutation in human history, one that appeared surprisingly recently and reshaped entire populations. Blue, gray, and green eyes represent one of the most dramatic shifts in human appearance, not because they are more advanced, but because they are relatively new in evolutionary terms. For the vast majority of human history, dark eyes were universal. Lighter eye colors only emerged after humans migrated far from the regions where our species first evolved. Blue eyes, in particular, are the result of a single genetic mutation that significantly reduced melanin production in the iris. Before this mutation occurred, every human had brown eyes. What makes blue eyes especially interesting is that they are not created by blue pigment. There is no blue coloring in the iris at all. Instead, the color comes from physics. When light enters an eye with very little melanin, it penetrates deeper into the iris. Shorter wavelengths of light scatter outward, while longer wavelengths are absorbed or pass through. This scattering effect is identical to the one that makes the sky appear blue when sunlight interacts with Earth's atmosphere. As a result, blue eyes can appear bright, pale, grayish, or even icy, depending on lighting conditions. This mutation likely emerged between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago in a relatively small human population. At the time, humans were expanding into northern regions, where sunlight was weaker. Winters were longer, and daylight hours were limited for much of the year. In these environments, having less melanin in the eyes may have allowed more light to reach the retina, slightly improving vision in dim conditions. Even a small improvement in low light sensitivity could have provided a meaningful advantage when hunting, navigating, or surviving during long winters. Over generations, this advantage may have contributed to the spread of lighter eye colors. However, environmental adaptation alone does not fully explain how rapidly blue eyes became common in northern Europe. This is where sexual selection likely played a powerful role. In early populations dominated by dark eyes, lighter eyes would have been rare and visually striking. Humans are naturally drawn to novelty and uncommon traits. When a physical feature stands out, it can become desirable, increasing the likelihood that it is passed on to future generations. Over time, this preference can amplify the spread of a trait far beyond what survival benefits alone would achieve. Gray eyes are even rarer than blue eyes and contain extremely low levels of melanin. Their distinctive steel or silver appearance comes from a more diffuse scattering of light across multiple wavelengths rather than emphasizing blue tones. This gives gray eyes a neutral and stable coloration that changes less dramatically with lighting. Some researchers believe gray eyes may represent an extreme adaptation to environments with frequent cloud cover and low contrast, where consistent light filtering may have been beneficial. Green eyes occupy a narrow middle ground between dark and light eyes. They require a precise balance of moderate melanin and a yellowish pigment known as lipochrome. Too much melanin would result in brown eyes, while too little would create blue eyes. This delicate balance explains why green eyes are rare and often appear to shift in color depending on light, surroundings, and contrast. From an evolutionary perspective, green eyes may have offered flexibility rather than specialization. They provide moderate protection from bright light while still allowing increased sensitivity in dim environments. This balance may have been advantageous in regions with mixed lighting conditions, such as forests, mountains, or temperate climates with changing seasons. Together, blue, gray, and green eyes illustrate how human evolution responds not only to environmental pressure, but also to social dynamics and chance. They are reminders that evolution does not design with intention or symmetry. It experiments, preserves what works, and allows variation to spread when conditions permit. Beyond the more familiar eye colors, there are rarer variations that reveal the outer limits of human genetic diversity. These eye colors are uncommon, not because they are flawed, but because they require very specific biological conditions to appear. Amber eyes, extremely dark eyes, often perceived as black, and heterochromia all represent unique outcomes of how melanin and other pigments are distributed in the iris during development. Amber eyes are frequently misunderstood. Many people confuse them with hazel or light brown, but amber eyes are genetically and visually distinct. They are characterized by a solid golden, copper, or honey-like color that remains stable across different lighting conditions. Unlike hazel eyes, which shift between green and brown, amber eyes maintain a consistent tone. This coloration results from high levels of a yellowish pigment called lipochrome, combined with very low levels of melanin. The result is an iris that reflects light in a warm, golden spectrum rather than scattering it broadly. Because this combination is rare, amber eyes appear in only a small percentage of the global population. Interestingly, amber eyes are common in certain animal species, particularly predators such as wolves, owls, and big cats. While this does not imply any behavioral connection in humans, it may explain why amber eyes are often perceived as intense or commanding. Humans instinctively associate eye appearance with alertness and attention, and amber eyes naturally draw focus. From an evolutionary perspective, amber eyes likely did not spread because they provided a strong environmental advantage. Instead, their rarity and striking appearance suggests that social and sexual selection played a larger role. When a trait is visually distinctive, it can become desirable, increasing its likelihood of being passed on even without a clear survival benefit. At the opposite end of the spectrum are extremely dark eyes that appear black. True black eyes do not exist in humans. What appears black is actually an extremely high concentration of dark brown melanin in the iris. This saturation absorbs nearly all incoming light, giving the eye a deep, uniform appearance. Functionally, these eyes provide maximum protection against intense sunlight and glare. They are most common in populations that evolved in equatorial regions where UV exposure is constant and strong. High melanin levels reduce eye strain, limit light scattering, and protect internal eye structures from long-term damage. Because the pupil blends seamlessly into the dark iris, emotional cues such as pupil dilation are harder to detect. This may explain why dark eyes are often perceived as mysterious, guarded, or powerful across many cultures. These perceptions are social interpretations, not biological facts, but they demonstrate how physical traits can influence human interaction. Heterochromia represents one of the rarest eye-related conditions in humans. It occurs when a person has two different eye colors or multiple colors within a single iris. This condition affects less than 1% of the population and usually arises from uneven melanin distribution during early development. Emoscasis, heterochromia, is harmless and purely cosmetic. However, because human brains are wired to expect symmetry in faces, asymmetrical eye color immediately captures attention. Throughout history, this has led to heterochromia being associated with symbolism, mythology, and supernatural beliefs. In reality, heterochromia is simply another example of genetic variation. It highlights how small developmental changes can produce dramatic visual differences without altering function or health. When you step back and consider all eye colors together, a larger picture emerges. Eye color is not about identity, personality, or destiny. It is about history. Each variation represents a response to environment, chance, and social dynamics playing out over thousands of years. Your eye color tells a story that began long before language, nations, or modern culture. It reflects the light conditions your ancestors lived under, the climates they endured, And the genetic experiments that succeeded simply because they worked well enough. When you look into the mirror, you are not just seeing a color, you are seeing evolution frozen in place, a biological record of survival written into your eyes.